Let us now talk about how the internet works. So far, we know that any machine on the network, like on the internet, must have an IP address in order to communicate with other machines. This is how a machine knows what network does it belong to, and if it's sending something to another machine that is not in its own network, then it gets sent to the router, which then finds a way to deliver that message to the target machine. And while we were talking in the previous videos, we said that every machine must have an IP address in order to communicate with other machines. That means that when we communicate with sites like yahoo.com, amazon.com, hotmail.com, any kind of site, then we must know its address. So when we open a browser and we go to www.amazon.com, we type it because this is a human readable way that we can remember that belongs to the site that we want to go to. But in reality, our computers must find the IP address of any website that we type in the browser. So how does our computers know the IP address of a website like www.amazon.com? Our computers use something called the Domain Name System, or DNS, that is like the phone book of the internet. The DNS eliminates the need for humans like us to memorize IP addresses such that 104.101.202.102, we cannot keep memorizing IP addresses for all the websites that we want to go to. As humans, we want to access information online by typing up human-readable domain names like Amazon.com, Google.com, and Yahoo.com. So the DNS translates a domain name like Amazon.com to its IP address, such that the browser can go and access these servers and present you with the page that you see when you go to that Amazon.com website. So what does this DNS system consist of? The domain name system is a lot of databases that contains something called the resource records. These resource records include the name and IP address of the websites that we want to visit. An example of that may be Amazon.com and 102.173.whatever, which is the IP address corresponding to Amazon.com. But DNS servers are not residing in one place. The database for the DNS servers is scattered throughout the internet. It is divided into thousands of separately managed zones, which are managed by separate administrators. The best way to explain this is by looking at an example. Say we want to navigate to www.example.co.jp, and we are sitting on this laptop here, and our laptop is set to use our local DNS server in order to resolve host names into IP addresses. So the first thing our computer does is it sends a DNS query to this DNS server and says, what is the IP address of www.example.co.jp? That DNS server doesn't know at the moment. So what it does, it sends a query to the base DNS servers of all DNS servers, and it says, I want to know where is www.example.co.jp. At this point, this DNS server doesn't know the IP address for this domain name. So what it does is, it sends a response back. It says, I don't know, but I know the IP address for JP, which you can query for the host name that you're looking for. So now our DNS server knows where JP, which is this part of the domain name, is, but it doesn't know where the whole domain name, which is www.example.co.jp, is. So it sends a message to JP and it says, I want to know where is www.example.co.jp. JP says, I don't know, but I know where co is. So it sends the IP of co back to the DNS server and it says, ask co. So DNS server sends a message to co and says, where is www.example.co.jp? And co says, I don't know where it is, but I know where example is. And here's the IP address of example, and that is example. And then the DNS server sends a message to example and it says, where is www.example.co.jp? And because www is right underneath example, then the example DNS server will send back a message that says, here is the IP address of www.example.co.jp. And at that point, the DNS server will forward that IP address to our computer, which is the main computer that asked for it. And then our computer can use that IP address to access this server right away.